I think the plateau point is really important because clearly what we need to see, particularly to justify expectations for some of the reopening trades, is that we don't just stabilize and continue. But I also think your point about the summer is key. And the reason why is because one of the areas where I think it's been hardest to see normalization for consumers is precisely in what they would normally be doing at this time of year, which is taking holidays. So I think while it's become much easier to eat in a restaurant, I think it's still pretty hard to know what the shape of your holidays look like for this summer. And therefore, I think, as you say, we will probably get a better read on this and maybe on the job market as we head through the summer and maybe into September.
And we should ask you about the China regulatory crackdown, because we've had a slew of different opinions this morning, but I would say largely the view has been this is a temporary risk for investors, and that once Beijing's done, we will see these companies return to winning ways. The market obviously has sold down quite aggressively on the regulatory uncertainty. What's your view here? Is this a step change in how we should think about China tech valuations, or just a pause on what will be a long and productive road ahead?
There's probably something to both the structural argument and the view that things may have moved too quickly in the near term. I think from the structural viewpoint, we have been concerned about this structural change for some time, in that clearly over time the Chinese authorities have come to feel uncomfortable with the power balance between large private corporations and the state. And I think that can be seen in a number of areas. One is just profit. If you look at, for example, the education sector, although I think that was perhaps a more specific case, the ones that are more general are control of data is perhaps one of the most important, and competition policy as well. I think the authorities do see the private control of data and perhaps limited competition as things that are holding the whole economy and society back. And changing those isn't going to come overnight. So I think it is very important that investors understand that a more activist hand from the state is going to be something that investors have to reckon with, and it probably does have an impact in terms of end valuations. Having said that, it doesn't suit the Chinese state to drive these companies out of business. They benefit from their innovation, which can't be replicated through state-owned entities, and therefore I think we will see an easing off. And so having had quite cautious positions in our portfolios with regard to emerging markets in China, we've kind of neutralized those now, but don't expect this story to go away.
And Sunil, before we wrap up with you, I mean, what else have you changed positioning in recently? Anything that you're very attracted to or indeed repelled by?
One of the sectors that's interested us quite a lot is the energy sector in Europe. It is clearly, I think, an area where you would imagine it would be a beneficiary of a gradual reopening of economies and of normal activity. And I think from an earnings perspective and indeed cash flow, I think that has been very much the case. What hasn't really followed through has been the response from investors. So, for example, first quarter earnings were pretty strong, but you didn't really get much outperformance after the earnings season. We think things are a little bit more promising now because what the companies are showing is that they can actually continue with their investment plans, particularly around decarbonisation, which in our view is a key differentiator, let's say, from US companies. European companies are really trying to turn themselves into diversified energy companies, but it's not holding them back from increasing dividends and increasing distributions. And I think when you look at the yields that are available, they are starting to look quite attractive. So it's an area that we've become a bit more interested in.